I want to welcome you back into the Locked On Red Sox podcast, and thank you so much for making Locked On Red Sox your first listen of every single day. I'm your host, Jake Nizuski, and I hope everybody has enjoyed this first week of 2023. And our last episode was able to help you not only get excited for this new year, but also get excited about the Boston Red Sox. But in this episode, we're going to start looking into what should excite you about the AAA affiliate Worcester Red Sox. We saw a lot of different players from Tristan Cassis, Brian Bayo, Connor Wong come up through the system who recently played in this past season with the WooSox. And we also saw a few different guys come through the bullpen, and Caleb Ort, Zach Kelly, a lot of different exciting things happening in Worcester going into this next season. But we brought on play-by-play broadcaster Tyler Murray to speak about what excites him going into this next season regarding the WooSox, as well as some of his reactions on how the Red Sox offseason has played out so far. Now let's get into our conversation with Tyler Murray.
You are Locked On Red Sox, your daily Boston Red Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Here with play-by-play broadcaster for the Worcester Red Sox, Tyler Murray. So how are we doing today, Tyler?
I'm excellent, Iggy. Thank you for having me. Love the positivity that you and Lauren were dropping on the Monday episode. So we're going to try to keep that going today.
Appreciate that. We did our best to, bring a little bit of positivity to start the 2023 year with all the negativity that sort of happened throughout 2022, not only during the season, but during the off season. We try and be the voice for the Red Sox fans the best way that we can be, and, not only give them the good information, but also sometimes the information that they might not like to hear all the time.
I get it. And it feels like a transition period for the big league team. So this is a great time to talk with you, man. I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. I did want to start off with, speaking a little bit about not specifically baseball, but I know you're also a hockey guy as well. And, the NHL Winter Classic just happened at Fenway Park a few days ago. And I wanted to sort of get your reaction to the Bruins players walking into the stadium wearing Red Sox old school jerseys.
It was awesome. I mean, give the Penguins credit too. The pillbox caps for the classic Pirates uniforms. That's iconic baseball for me. But yeah, to see those old Red Sox uniforms, Marchand coming off holding a bat over his shoulder, incredible stuff. And I think there was a little bit of Winter Classic fatigue on a national scale. But I think it's really cool to have it at Fenway Park. Maybe not every year, but they've got high school games there. They got college games there coming up this weekend. I think it is awesome. Now, I've only seen it from a press box, so I know maybe some in-stadium fan vantage points aren't the very best, but just as an entertainment product as a whole, and them going all out for it, Veritech, everything, that was really cool.
Yeah, and it was even awesome to, not only see them with the old school jerseys, the hats, but then they also had the cleats, the gloves. Bergeron had the bat on his shoulder as well. And I also thought it was neat to see Kike there too, all dressed up in Bruins stuff, and, saw a little bit of TikToks and social stuff with the Bruins and the Red Sox. I'd love to see it.
Yeah, and I know fans appreciate how much connectivity there is between the big league teams in this market. So, yeah, almost unsurprising to see Red Sox players involved. So great to have Kike there. And the Bruins just keep on rolling, man. So I don't know what's going to stop them this year.
Yeah, I have no clue, but it was cool to see some success at Fenway Park, even though we're not in spring right now. But I think the funniest part, being around the stadium, was really hearing people speaking about John Henry also owning the Pittsburgh Penguins and also the Red Sox. But it's been a big subject throughout this offseason, sort of, as you mentioned, a transition sort of year potentially for the Red Sox. Some people are calling it a rebuild. I don't really think so too much. I'm sort of going at the tone of, this maybe is more of a retooling, trying to figure out what the direction of the overall team is. Obviously, with the departure of Xander Bogaerts, sort of leaves a void in terms of the leadership within the clubhouse. But I'm curious from your vantage point on the outside, somebody who works for the Worcester Red Sox, the AAA affiliate of the team, what has sort of been your initial reaction to everything that has unfolded so far this offseason?
I mean, I just keep going back to when Chaim Bloom first got the job. He's taken from the Rays, so that's a pretty obvious sign that the Red Sox want to move more in that direction. But how far in that direction is the question. I mean, you get excited about how good the farm system has become. You figure with the experience from Tampa, you're going to find more ways to win on the margins, maybe go even deeper into analytics, and that certainly happened. But at first, it felt like a perfect combination because you would have all the little things that make the Rays good, but you'd also have that big payroll. So that felt just like a match made in heaven. But I know why fans are frustrated because the payroll hasn't quite kicked in yet. I think they're middle of the pack right now in the majors instead of top 5, which is where I think a lot of baseball people think they should be. But obviously, the big question mark or maybe even misstep was the Bogaerts situation. But for me, it would have been more of a concern if it was always the plan to not bring him back. That would have been a sign of, okay, you know what, we're just not going to extend guys. We're going to do the Rays thing where we stay young, we stay cheap, and we find ways to win, which is impressive how Tampa's done it. But just the reports after Bogaerts signed in San Diego, it sounded like Chaim Bloom and the front office were devastated. So hindsight, yes, we all know now they should have offered him in spring training and just avoided all of it. But I think it was at least not a worst case scenario. They didn't say, you know what, leave. They tried, but obviously not well enough or hard enough. So this just becomes what everyone's talking about now. Sign Devers. The initial reports where the Red Sox didn't want to go crazy and pay a massive dollar amount to get Devers. Well, you have to. I just think you have to because that's where the game is going now. Someone's going to pay him similar to what Bogaerts got. They should probably get more than what Bogaerts got. So I think you're going to have to pony up for Devers. If they don't, that's when I get really concerned. Just because he's everything you want, I think, in a foundational offensive piece. And good start this week with avoiding arbitration at the very least.
Right. And it was really funny to see, fans' reactions to all that. They're like, let's add another one next to that 1-year deal and maybe 300 more million over there. But, with everything that not only unfolded this past season, but during this offseason, I'm somebody who, starting this podcast over a year ago, sort of preached the whole mindset of in Chaim we trust. I was one of those people that got really caught up in sort of Chaim's experience with the Rays, building up that farm system, helping them, have a sustainable rotation year in and year out and bringing up homegrown talent. And, one thing that I think really sort of frustrated fans a lot through the start of this offseason was, putting Bogaerts as the, top priority and then not ultimately getting it done. And, the one thing that for me, I sort of, hear people on Twitter saying this, and I sort of feel this a little bit myself, is if the Bogaerts situation didn't really happen how it did, I think fans would be a lot more happy about how this offseason has overall gone with Kenley Jansen as the closer, Chris Martin coming on. Then you also got Yoshida and Adam Jones said, he's the Japanese Juan Soto. Then you also got Justin Turner, Corey Kluber. And so I feel like, they've had some good moves, but it's not something that's really going to get fans excited and, thinking that this team is a legitimate World Series contender.
Yeah, I think it's just a different way of building a winner. And Chaim Bloom has said from the start that the hardest thing is to win and build at the same time. So we've seen Red Sox teams win World Series and then go back to the bottom of the division and then come back and win and then all the way back down. I've heard some people compare them to the Marlins from when I was a kid, but I don't think that's necessarily fair. It's definitely not fair. But I think what they're trying to do, at least, is build something more sustainable that can last in more of a dynasty fashion, which is easier said than done, obviously. But I think if you can zoom out and maybe have a little patience, we're going to see where it goes. Because the little moves, as you mentioned, that they've made, they've looked pretty good. I mean, even last year, you bring in Tommy Pham, you bring in Reese McGuire. Everyone's unhappy that Christian Vasquez is gone, and I understand why. But I think Reese McGuire played himself into a conversation with Connor Wong this year to share that job at catcher unless they bring somebody else in. So I think that move's worked out pretty well. Now, it's not the home run move you want to see necessarily as a hungry baseball fan, but I think, like we said earlier, on the margins, they're doing a lot of good things.
And you brought up the Christian Vasquez trade, and one of the guys that came over in that deal is Enmanuel Valdez, and he's somebody who we saw some fans mention. He could potentially be somebody who slots into that second base shortstop position. Maybe not to start the season, but maybe down the line this season, maybe next season. And from somebody who watched him after getting traded from the Astros farm system over to the Red Sox and spent a good chunk of the second half with Worcester. What was sort of your impression of Valdez? Not only his plate approach, which we've seen has been regarded very highly, but also his defense as well.
Yeah, the defense was always the big question mark. So we would ask manager Chad Tracy almost every week, how's he coming along? And he was pretty frank that he wasn't quite ready to be a big league infielder just yet. And he played second base and third base primarily. So they would just work on some almost, it probably sounds like fundamental stuff, like quick transfer from glove to throwing hand, stuff like that, getting double plays and a little bit more of a smooth rhythm. So it's those little things that we just take for granted from a big league infielder. At the plate, I mean, he was nuts to begin his WooSox career. He had like 5 home runs in his first couple of weeks, but I think we saw a little bit of streakiness from him. The pop is there. He's not the biggest guy. He's listed at 5'9", under 200 pounds, but he definitely has pop. It's just a matter of the consistency. So I think it's a big league bat eventually. Defensively, I can only imagine he's putting in the work this offseason, and the Red Sox have. I mean, the AAA development, and we'll talk about that a little later, I'm sure, but the way they're able to get these guys better in a short amount of time, we've seen it, pitching staff, hitters, whatever. I think Enmanuel Valdez probably got a lot better this year alone, just working with all the great coaches in Worcester. So high hopes for him, but I can't say he's a surefire answer on the infield in Boston just yet.
And that was one thing that as you mentioned, once he got traded over, the defense was a little bit of a question mark, and he was also listed as an outfielder and can play tons of different infield positions as well. But it was nice to see some diving plays there, here and there. When I saw him play at Polar Park, and you definitely saw that pop. Also, great plate presence. Was able to really be patient at the plate, draw walks, and did struggle with some strikeout stuff later on in the year, but it was good to see him, continue to get better throughout the time with the WooSox. I hope that you are enjoying my conversation with Tyler Murray so far, but I just want to take a second to talk to you about betonline.net, which is your number one source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there, from pro football to college bowl season to basketball. We've got all at betonline.net. If you love sports podcasts, which if you're listening to this, you definitely do, you can even find those at BetOnline as well. And they're always the fastest and easiest way to get your betting info. So head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more at BetOnline, where the game starts. Now let's get back into my conversation with Tyler Murray. But you brought up how the coaching staff really does a great job of helping these players develop. And from your perspective, working with the team, what did you really see throughout this season that really stuck out to you?
I've seen, let's see, minor league baseball, single A, double A, triple A, like 11, 12 years now. And what's so important is how much guys trust their coaches. And in single A, you don't necessarily have coaches who have the pedigree of a Rich Gedman or a Paul Abbott. And Paul Abbott specifically, every pitcher on Worcester staff just says, I trust this guy. He's been there. He's done it. He was one of the best pitchers on that record-setting Mariners team back in the early 2000s, 2001. So they just trust him. He's been through the battles. And Paul Abbott has just that calm demeanor. And he's direct with what guys need to improve on. So just putting trust into your coaches can be so important, especially at this stage in your career. Some guys, maybe you go up to the big leagues, you come back to AAA, and you're like, I don't deserve to be here. I should be back in the major leagues. I'm not going to listen. I don't have any specific examples of that, but you can imagine where the mentality can be tough to work through at times. So for Paul Abbott to have just so many more success stories this year, obviously Brian Bayo made some huge strides this year. You guys were talking Monday about John Schreiber, the star of the bullpen. He added a sinker. He took several big steps, adding new stuff to his arsenal with Paul Abbott in the past couple of years. So that's a sign to me that he's not just, okay, let's work on these mechanics, let's make this tweak. It's like, if we need to revamp, we're going to revamp. And that's changed some careers over the last couple of seasons.
Yeah, I mean, you brought it up with Schreiber, and you've also seen a few other guys. We saw Zach Kelly break through the scene this past season, and Caleb Ort as well. And that was one thing that seemed very similar over these last two seasons for the Red Sox. Is around July and August, it was COVID in 2021, and it was the injury bug in in 2022. Excuse me, but pitchers really had to be able to slot in there. The Red Sox really had to have good depth, not only on the position player side, but also within the rotation in the bullpen. And we saw that very prevalent throughout July during 2022. And what did you really see from those pitchers throughout this past season in Worcester that really surprised you? And what pitchers do you think could potentially be on the rise that we could see in 2023?
Yeah, I've got one big name to watch. I think that probably rises above the pack, at least from what we saw in September. It's Brian Mata. And he was off the radar, Tommy John surgery, but came back. He was still hitting triple digits. I don't think we saw 100 on the Polar Park radar gun, but 99 consistently. I like the slider and changeup. But Brian Mata, he was not long ago the number one guy. And since then, Brian Bayo is kind of taken over that spot. But I think Bayo's actually graduated off those prospects list. So Mata is back. He's got stuff. And Paul Abbott, I think, before Tommy John, said that he's got some of the best stuff that he's ever worked with before. So love what Mata put on tape in September. 10 strikeouts in his final start of the season, where it felt like he finally was ramped up and ready to give it all to just have a good end to the season. So really excited to see Mata. Dude throws hard. And then you got other guys like Brandon Walter, who was injured. I think it was a neck thing for most of last year. Doesn't walk anybody. Had 68 strikeouts against 3 walks the first 2 months of the season before he got injured. Chris Murphy's intriguing. He had an immaculate inning. So when he's locked in, he's really, really good. There were just a couple of starts where it got away from him a bit. And then how about Franklin Herman? I'm excited to see what he might add to his arsenal in the offseason. The fastball is so good. It's such a good fastball, late movement, upper 90s. He's almost hit 100 in AAA. I think he said 99.9 was the highest he got to. But that fastball is such a good pitch. Nobody can survive on just one pitch besides Mariano Rivera. But Herman only needs to have one more consistent offering, and he's going to be a dominant big league reliever. And it's right now the slider is probably his best chance of doing that. So excited to see how the slider comes along in the offseason.
Yeah, and you brought up Mata with I remember his first few starts in Worcester struggled a little bit with his control. We saw that walk rate up a little bit, but then once he started to get comfortable, you really started to see that potential. And we actually had on Brandon Walter, I believe it was a few months ago, and he really vocalized how good of a work ethic Mata has. They both sort of recovered from Tommy John surgery at a similar time, and so he mentioned that they sort of helped each other out and were able to. They were able to, motivate each other as well. Thad Ward also said a very similar thing about Mata. And so Mata as well as Walter are two guys that I'm very excited to see how they develop in Worcester throughout this next season. But Herman, I'm curious to see if he gets a look at the Major League squad. Obviously struggled a little bit when he did get that opportunity. But Zach Kelly and Frank Herman are two guys that I could definitely see a possibility of them slotting in to that bullpen.
Yeah, Zach Kelly, big fan of his, and it was a mystery how you look through his resume. He was released by the Angels, and then Red Sox pick him up, and okay, he's one of their best relievers. But it's not really close. So what happened? What happened with the Angels? Well, he got injured, then COVID happened, so he was one of the many people affected by that. So he just got a fresh start, and with great development staff, great coaching staff, and Chad Tracy, the WooSox manager, was the field director for all the Angels minor leagues when Zach Kelly was there. So there was some familiarity there. And the changeup from Zach Kelly is just unhittable. You can be sitting on it, but it has just fall off the table, arm side run movement for it, which it's incredible. And the fastball has plenty of heat on it, where it was no surprise to me, at least. He went up to the major leagues and he put zeros on the board for what felt like his first couple of weeks. And you give up a couple of runs here and there, but if you have that great fastball changeup combination like he does, you're going to have a 10-year big league career in the bullpen. So really excited for Zach Kelly.
Yeah, we're a big fan of Zach Kelly on this podcast. We had him on during the lockout, and it was really cool to see him flourish this past season, not only in AAA but also the majors. And what a way for him to get up to the majors. Like not only getting that call, but I believe it was a few days later he had his firstborn baby, and what a week for him, and such a great guy. Couldn't have happened to anyone better. But what one player going into the 2022 season really surrounded a lot of buzz coming out of spring training was Ryan Fitzgerald. And he had that whole nickname Fitzy from Kevin Youkilis. Then they had the merch for him throughout the WooSox season. But it was nice to see him start off the season very hot. Through April and May, ended up hitting 10 home runs with a 267 batting average, but then dropped off a little bit from June to September, batted 175 with just 6 home runs. And from some people that I spoke to about him, they mainly mentioned that they thought his regression was due to him playing a little bit too much, being all over the diamond. But I was curious from your perspective, why do you really think that we saw a little bit of a drop off from Ryan Fitzgerald this past season, a little bit in the second half?
I think I have a pretty simple answer, is that he was fighting through an injury for most of the second half. He called it a foot injury, and I think it was officially announced as turf toe. And he probably would admit that he forced it too much. He probably should have taken time off sooner. But you look at his history, you can understand why. He doesn't want to sit out. He doesn't want to fall off the radar because he's fighting against the odds. He's already overcome so much. Non-drafted free agent, $1 signing out of Indy ball, and become an absolute fan favorite in Worcester, and had people in Boston clamoring for him in the springtime. So he finally took a couple of weeks off after that turf toe injury and hit a home run in his first game back. After that, only one more home run, didn't bring his average back toward where it was in the spring, as you mentioned. So I wonder, in fact, I would probably bet that it's what every player goes through toward the end of the year. It's, okay, my batting average is this. I better get it to here, or I'm going to regret how the season went. And so he's forcing it, so he's overdoing it. And who knows, the fact that he played through that injury, or at least tried to, for what felt like a month plus, maybe he wasn't fully ready to come back. I don't think he would necessarily rush things after seeing how much he struggled. But the defense was always elite all the way through. You mentioned how he can play absolutely everywhere. So I would bet on a good start to this upcoming season for Ryan Fitzgerald. But then again, you have a guy who maybe didn't have a ton of scouting reports on him until this full year in AAA, but that's just a guess. So I'm curious to see what he'll come back with.
Yeah, because that's one of the biggest reasons why I ask, because it's tough to not root for a guy like that. Not only with his personality, his energy that he brings to the ballpark every single day, but also his story and his journey to get to the WooSox. And it was cool to see him, as I mentioned, start off the season so great. But hopefully he's able to get that turf toe all good, because after I thought about it, after you mentioned it, he does sort of have that toe tap sort of load up with his swing, so that makes a lot of sense. And I'm really excited to see that flow and the mullet back at Polar Park this next season. But one thing that not tons of people might know who's listening to this podcast is that you spent a good amount of years with the New Hampshire Fisher Cats and with the Blue Jays organization, and you actually were the broadcaster when Kevin Biggio, Bo Bichette, and Vladimir Guerrero Jr. were a part of the New Hampshire Fisher Cats, the AA affiliate for the Blue Jays. And I was curious, sort of from what you've seen from the outside now, a few years removed from that organization, being able to see what those players have been able to do on the big stage. I was curious, sort of your initial reaction to all that.
Yeah, I mean, they've invested in that young core like crazy in Toronto, as far as even bringing the manager up from that 2018 New Hampshire AA team, John Schneider. They immediately made him they created a position for him called Major League Coach. Then they made him bench coach, and now he's signed a 3-year deal as the new manager. And it's at least initially because of how well he gets along with those young guys from their days in the minors. So they're all in on at least Vlad and Bo. I know Biggio has fallen off a little bit. Really good on base guy. With some power, but I think injuries and just lack of consistency, maybe just lack of consistent playing time, has affected Biggio a bit. But Guerrero we would have won MVP if not for Ohtani 2 years ago now. And Bichette, he's an interesting one. Bo Bichette grew up a Red Sox fan.
Actually didn't know that.
I think his mom went to college in Boston. I think she went to BU, and for whatever reason, he's always just loved the Red Sox. A lot of young baseball players do. Fenway Park, the history, the whole bit. So I don't know. I always had in my head what would it look like Bo Bichette at Fenway Park, but I don't think anything's imminent there. But it is, coming up on time to think about extensions for those guys. So that'd be very, very interesting. It feels like a win now team, but the question is, are they going to fully commit and invest? Because there were some downswings for Bichette this year, but I think he leveled it off. But just Guerrero, there was an article that came out on Vladdy that said, is he finally being scouted? Have they finally figured out what to do with him? High fastball and then breaking ball. But I think he straightened that out, and he's definitely got that superstar potential. So we'll see what they do. I think you have to extend Vlad. We'll see what they do with Bo and Bichette. Or Bo and Biggio, but yeah, pretty cool. Going back to your point, to see those guys go all the way to the major leagues and still be great.
And one thing that you mentioned at the beginning of this conversation was how you've been able to see the Red Sox farm system sort of evolve. And the Fisher Cats played the Portland Sea Dogs multiple times throughout the time that you were with the organization. And I was curious sort of what you've seen, not only from the players and the talent that was put out there with your time with the Fisher Cats, and now being able to be a part of the Red Sox organization with the WooSox. How have you really seen sort of the build of the Boston Red Sox farm system over your time?
That's a great question. There's a major difference, and it's all about depth. You could probably count on less than one hand the amount of can't miss, we got to get to the ballpark to watch these Portland Sea Dogs prospects maybe 5 years ago. I can probably name them for you going across multiple years. You had Andrew Benintendi, you had Yohan Moncada, and then Rafael Devers. And then it started getting into, okay, our best guy right now is Brian Mata. We're not sure what the ceiling is. We're not sure what the floor is, but this is our best guy. So I think, like we said earlier, I think Mata is going to have a really good chance to be an effective starter in the big leagues. But it just comes down to how many guys do you have in your everyday lineup that you could at least envision making an impact at the big league level. And it just seems like it's more than ever. Even with Benintendi and Moncada on the same team, that was a last place Portland team. And we were always scratching our heads like, what's going on? But when you looked a little bit deeper in the roster, they were a little bit thin. So now you've got the depth. You had Portland in the playoffs this year. They had a couple of heartbreaking losses to the Yankees affiliate in the first round. So who knows if that could have bounced a different way. Playoffs were weird in AAA this year. It was 2 out of 20 teams made the playoffs, 1 out of 10 in each division. So we'll see if they change the format this year. But WooSox were more than good enough to be a playoff team this season. So, there's just top to bottom starting rotation. The starting rotation depth in AAA, Iggy, I know you saw it. Every single day there was either a top prospect or toward the end a big league rehabber. So you just don't have that at most minor league levels. So that's where you can see the difference from Chaim Bloom's system, I guess we'll call it.
And even a guy like Brian Keller, who was, a minor league Rule 5 draft pick last year from the Yankees, he really impressed me, not only out of the rotation, but also out of the bullpen. I remember, he came in there out of the bullpen. I think he pitched like 3 or 4 innings one game and, struck out 5 or 6. And, he was somebody, even though he's in the later parts of his career, being able to have that depth, especially whether it's in the rotation or in the bullpen. Chaim Bloom is, really stressed that, especially, if injuries do arise, like we've seen these past few seasons, being able to have those different effective guys to be able to slot in there is super duper important. But to end this conversation, I wanted to sort of give you some hard hitters, your opinions on working for the WooSox. And so from all the games that you called throughout this last season, what was your favorite one to call? And it can't be the no hitter or a walk off.
Well, I think, no hitters and the 5 walk-offs we had is probably top of the list. But I mean, I just go back to what made Polar Park the loudest, what made it shake with our incredible fans there in Worcester. It was probably that 4th of July game, a huge crowd, and they were down 3-0 late, and they had a 5-run 8th inning. It was a Ronaldo Hernandez 3-run homer. And that was, I think they got back at like 5 a.m. I know we got back at 5 a.m. After leaving Rochester. It was an extra inning game in the season finale, and the 4th of July was on a Monday, so you don't get the Monday off. Anyway, quick turnaround, and okay, 3-0, but boom, they just came to life, and the place went nuts. So That Hernandez home run on the 4th of July was awesome. So that's probably up there. And then when you had, Chris Sale and Nathan Eovaldi, Kike Hernandez, I think they were all there within the same week. I mean, that was crazy. And definitely a lot of fanfare around those games.
And then even, the Michael Walker game, even though, I said not the no-hitter, that was
you're cheating now. What's going on?
That was pretty incredible. I was there, as a media member, and I didn't realize that there was no hits until you got to the 8th inning or something like that. And I talked to AJ Politi sort of about that situation, and he mentioned that he had a rough outing out there and coming out of the bullpen, and he was down there watching the tape and everything like that. I believe he said that Chris Murphy was like, go out there into the dugout, like there's 2 more outs, like, and he's like, what do you mean, like I don't get it. And Murph's like, I'm not gonna say anything, bro, like go out there. And then he realized it and was able to celebrate with the team. But with that energy at Polar Park, that was probably the one thing that really stuck out to me, not only being able to work for the organization, but being there as a media member, was I had never seen a minor league sort of environment that not only when, they sing Sweet Caroline, it echoes, but also just in general, when certain guys come up to the plate, it just feels like you're at Fenway Park.
Yeah, it's almost become cliche to the point where you wonder if it happens in other ballparks, like, oh, these fans care, they're engaged, they're informed. I just haven't seen it happen as much as it does at Polar Park. And you're getting baseball fans of all ages, of all, I guess, intensity levels. And you get a lot of diehard Red Sox fans. So many people wanted to see Tristan Casas this year and Brian Bayo. And Boston's always been one of the smartest fan bases there is, but that just makes it feel more big league. So I don't think there's any ballpark, maybe even any sports venue, that blends the minor league fun, but the big league feel and excitement that Polar Park does. And obviously it helps that it's brand new and there's a lot of investment into the ballpark and to the surrounding area, which has really revitalized Worcester. But we're just lucky to be there every day, man. It's incredible, and having our broadcast on the same TV network as the Boston Red Sox obviously adds into that as well.
Exactly. And you mentioned, especially the ballpark being new and lots of different great features. I'm curious from your time, calling out the games, you have to, say over the berm or on the right field Worcester wall. What are some of your favorite features of the park?
I just like that it's a 360-degree loop, so you can walk all the way around. And for the most part, no, I think entirely, except maybe behind the batter's eye, you can see the field, open air concourse. So if you're in the concession line, you can turn around and watch the game. And older stadiums, they didn't have that. I mean, Hadlock Field, AA Portland, is one of my favorite places to watch a game ever. But if you want to go down and get a drink, you can't see the game at the same time. But they started direct delivery to you food service after COVID, so problem solved. But it's got a lot of different features, as you mentioned. But the 360 loop, open air concourse, but then the DCU Club, which is where we do the broadcast from, and they have the full bar, great food for staff and for fans coming in. That is just, I've given a few tours to former coworkers, and they love everything. But when they get to the DCU Club behind home plate, that great area, they say, okay, this is what makes Polar Park next level. This is what we wish we had at our ballparks. I hear that all the time. So love the DCU Club.
The food there is the best. I don't know about you, but my favorites are the cupcakes.
Oh, cupcakes, yes. Our guy Cooper Boardman loves the churros. Guy had seven.
Churros are so good.
Guy had 7 churros before a game one time, and it wasn't even a big deal. It was a big deal to me, but Cooper was fine with it. For me, I'm all about the finger food. Like I'm grabbing and going. We're getting ready for the game, so anything enclosed, I'm good to go. But yeah, we're very lucky there.
I love it. And so to end this conversation, there's one subject that we talked about, on Monday was what are we most excited about going into the Red Sox season? So I'm curious, for you, getting ready for the WooSox season, what are you most excited about?
Well, for the big league team, Tristan Casas, I'm excited about. He's a guy that can make you believe in analytics. What he hit under 200, but you watch his at bats and you're like, this guy is it. You know what makes him good. But for the WooSox, it's obviously that next generation of prospects, and it'll be a test of the new minor league depth. how much do they have it? Because like we said, every single night there was a top pitcher on the hill every start for the WooSox. Can they kind of reload it in that department? I'm guessing we're going to see Cedar Rafaela, who was on, minor league top plays defensively every single game. So that'll be exciting. But just to see what some of the not quite there pitchers are able to come back with from an off season, just to have a full. I know we're not completely in the clear, but to not maybe have COVID as much in the back of your mind as you would have thought during an off season, a lockout, of course, last year. Who knows what's going to happen? This feels like the real fullest, most okay. This is when things are going to happen, and this is how things are going to happen off season that a lot of these guys have had in a long, long time. So I'm just excited to see what the guys will come back with. We talked about Franklin Herman. So yeah, he's to add to his arsenal, Chris Murphy, Brandon Walter, and Brian Mata. I mean, those are the pitchers I'm looking at who have a real opportunity to add to what's already been a pretty impressive professional career.
Yeah, so Don Rafael, I'm so excited to see him at Polar Park. Got to watch him a little bit at Hadlock. Also spoke with him a little bit. And the one thing that I think you'd find curious is that he mentioned what helps him so much learn the outfield, because last year was his first time playing the outfield. Most people wouldn't think that, especially with his top 10 Sports Center catches, was that he just uses and allows the BP stuff to just help him track the ball and figure out, ways to become a better outfielder. I've heard that a few times, but especially with those types of catches, that's not the first thing that came to mind.
Yeah, they used to make me or let me shag balls down in single A because they didn't have enough guys, and that doesn't work for everybody. That did not help me at all. So,
did you get any diving catches?
Diving attempts, yeah.
Okay.
They gave me this little glove that's supposed to train you to catch it well, and again, it didn't help. It didn't help.
That's funny.
Yeah, professional broadcaster and ball shagger back in the Florida State League days.
I love it. I love it. Well, Tyler, really appreciate you taking the time. And if anybody who's listening right now wants to support you on Twitter or anything else that you're doing, I know outside of the WooSox, you're obviously a broadcaster for various different universities throughout Hockey East. But let the fans know how they can reach you.
Oh, I my Twitter handle. It's not worth a follow, folks. It's LT and then 2 underscores and then Murray. You're just going to see a lot of hockey line charts and pictures of ice. But I appreciate that, Iggy. But yeah, this has been great, man. Shout out to Lauren. She's the GOAT. Sorry we couldn't see her today, but you and her do an awesome job. And cool to be on. Cool to be on, man. Hope to talk to you soon.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely want to get you on, maybe more towards when the season's going on. But yeah, wish Lauren could have made it. It's Derek's birthday today, her husband. So she had to really enjoy it.
All right. That's great.
Yes, sir. But appreciate it, Tyler. Talk to you soon.
See you, Iggy.
I hope that you did enjoy my conversation with Tyler Murray and was able to get a little bit of insight on who you should keep your eye on regarding the Worcester Red Sox this next season, and also what should excite you about the Red Sox AAA affiliate. But we're going to continue to bring you great content throughout this offseason. If you haven't yet, make sure to subscribe to Locked On Red Sox over on YouTube or on whatever audio platform that you're listening to. We'll be posting 3 times a week up until spring training, and then it's 5 days a week again, baby. But tomorrow we have on a very special guest as well, in staff writer for ESPN, June Lee. He was the guy who broke the news that Rafael Devers and the Red Sox are galaxies apart in extension talks. We're definitely going to talk to him a little bit about that, as well as much, much more. So if you want to ask him a question, let us know over on Twitter. It's LO_Red Sox. Tweet us over there. We're also probably going to put a tweet out prior to the interview to where you guys can ask questions or bring up subjects that you would like us to talk about with June. But that's one thing that we really like to do with this podcast, is make it as fan engaging as possible. So then you're able to, whether it's ask a question to whatever guest we bring on or incorporate a topic that we talk about on the podcast. So as I mentioned, make sure to follow us over on Twitter. It's LO_Red Sox. You can also follow myself on Twitter. It's at Jake Iggy. And also my co-host Lauren is La 3 Laws, Lauren with 4 R's. But as always, we greatly appreciate everybody making Locked On Red Sox their first listen of every single day. Now make your second listen and check out Locked On MLB Prospects. Host Lindsey Crosby is a prospect encyclopedia, and he's going deep on the MLB stars of tomorrow. And we've actually had Lindsey on the podcast a few times. Great, knowledgeable guy, all about the prospect world in Major League Baseball. So if you want to learn more about not only the Red Sox prospects, but also prospects from other teams as well, make sure to go over and check out Locked On MLB Prospects. It's free and available wherever you get your podcast. And as always, we hope that everybody has a great rest of their day. We greatly appreciate everybody tuning in. And we'll end it how we always end it. Let's go Sox. Peace.